time on
Definitely, we can share
Facebook
the link. Yeah.
yeah. So I welcome everyone to Inno Interacts. Inno Interacts is a new initiative that we've taken, and we hope to have panelists every Tuesday at. I may change the time now that I've got this feedback 3 p.m. So I'll not announce 3 p.m. now. So we'll look at it, maybe keep it at 5. So Tuesday was kept because Friday our newsletter goes, our newsletter goes on Friday. So then the whole press release and the recording can be shared with everyone. So today's interaction is with architects who have captured new territories. So we have 4 panelists here, and a bit of thoughts what I had in mind, that a lot of us, not only architects, but I think it's in every profession that once you are trained for something, there are times when your passion kind of overrules your educational qualifications. And some of us want to explore those options, besides whether it aligns with our educational qualification is something very personal. But at times there are people who do not take that break, and they carry on in whatever they are qualified for, even though they may be having those passions themselves.
Yeah.
But some of us who are brave enough to come out of that track and explore things in new areas is what we want to talk today. So, talking about architects, for us, I feel that's what I've been talking last few weeks in almost all the kind of webinars where we are talking about role of women and other topics as well. That architecture per se, this course kind of trains you so well, because this is the only profession where we are given information which we kind of synthesize and then convert it into a concept, and then turn it into reality. So we have listening powers, we have power to kind of assimilate information and then make it into anything creative. So architecture, otherwise also as a career, gives many options like furniture design. One can go into real estate, interior design. And as I was saying, when I decided on this topic, I went online and I just wanted to know what's happening across the world, like how many architects have changed their directions. So it was very interesting to see that I saw a young architect who's Emarch, and she's writing children's books. There was another architect who's an attorney. And another one, which was very, very interesting, was that he's a Emarch from Harvard University, and he's a chef now. And he went into culinary education and turned into a chef. But if you look at the whole kind of everything together, as I said, architecture, we all are trained into that creative thing. So being a chef also, it's like when we work at home and we try out dishes. So somewhere our, that creativity comes along, because you're garnishing, you are, how you present everything. So I think everything boils down to one fact, that, that creativity in all of us. So today, we'll hear from all of you, your experiences and your advice to the younger ones, that what are the options and how you can take this journey. And it's okay that if you're not practicing architecture, what options they have. So I'll introduce, I'll first invite Deepika. Although we have panelists here to the audience who are here, to tell them that we have Tanya Khanna, who's the founder of Epistle Communications. We have Anish Rakeja, founder uh, Crescon, yes, and Deepika Gandhi, director, Le Corbusier Museum, and Jesse Jacob, founder, Fit the Soul. So I would like to first invite Deepika Gandhi. She's an associate professor at Chandigarh College of Architecture and is presently a director at Le Corbusier Center, which is Chandigarh Architecture Museum and Generate Museum as well. She was a part of the team that prepared the dossier for the transnational serial nomination for World Heritage for the Capitol Complex, Chandigarh, and has been actively working on the promotion of Chandigarh's heritage. So my question to Deepika is that, Deepika, in your role, uh, not as the associate professor, but as in the director of the museum, what are the challenges and what is the long-term career growth in that? And secondly, also your opinion to what is the best time to do a career change, whether it's.
I'll start with the first question. I think, the challenges that come, first of all, in India, especially, we have very few museums which are dedicated to architecture. Like, we have art museums, we have museums for the handicrafts and other things. But having curators or having specialists from architecture who are into museums. Now, museums, okay, my role is mainly management. It was meant to be a management kind of a role, although then it did go on to, because when I established the genre museum, I had to turn curator also, I had to turn a designer also, because I had to design the displays and everything. That part came in. And I think that is where my architectural education helped me a lot. If I look at it, I think like the genre house, it had to be restored first. So the restoration part, which requires a lot of technical input, and you need to have the research ability to go into drawings and details and photographs and get the actual facts. Then you have to deal with the engineers and the labor. You have to get it done, you have to get it restored in a certain way. That again architecture teaches you. Then when it comes to curating, because we are so used to doing these presentations and making these reports that we don't even realize how quickly we become adept at sifting through stuff, and like weeding out ki, oh, this is not important, this is important. And because we are more visual, so graphic design actually comes automatically to us. Okay, so if I have a wall, I will not just put, like a curator would just choose what needs to be put, but how should it be put? I think as an architect, I mean, frankly, I think architecture is a very complete kind of an education. It trains you
True.
to for many many things. We architects really undermine ourselves a lot. We don't think we are capable of doing all that. It was only when I came into this role of being managing a museum maybe, or looking at the activities. Now, even in architecture colleges, it's a very common thing that I think architecture colleges have a lot more co-curricular activities, and we have these design competitions and debates, and we are a lot more vocal. It all actually comes together when you go out in the field. For example, whether it is giving a heritage walk, whether it is having discussions, whether having panel discussions, the kind of confidence that comes when you face juries in and out, every day, you're defending your point, you're putting your point across, you become articulate, you learn how to put your message across. So I think that really helps a lot. So we architects actually get trained to do a lot more than we realize. There are some things which are we are trained for. Okay, this is like ABCD, this is your portfolio, this is what you can do. Besides that, we developed a lot of other skills which make us very good in many kinds of environment. Like, for example, a simple thing like dealing with a really high shot client, then dealing with the contractor, then dealing with the mason or the labor on site. We learn how to deal with people of all levels, and that actually helps you when you come into a management role also, because you have to put up a proposal to the higher ups, then you have to work with your colleagues, then you have to get the work done by people below you. So it's almost the same hierarchy, whether you're into a management thing or a museum thing. Now, as far as you're talking about the career switch, so I have not really had a career switch as such, and it all depends on what is the right age. Sometimes I think the earlier you find your bearings. Like I have had students who, when I was teaching them, and I immediately, I think they also realized, and we also realized that they were not very good designers. Now, this is this concept that every architect should be a good designer, which may or may not be true. Because by a good designer, also you may mean that there will be someone who's a very functional designer. There will be someone who cannot really handle a very creative design, and he can only give you a functional design. You have clients for everyone. But I have had students who within 1 or 2 years of graduating immediately shifted into 3D software maybe, or into photography, or into something else, and now they're doing really well. Or I have had students who till the age of 35 or 36 kept working in a big firm, like with a builder. And at that time, they decided to make the switch and start their own practices. And now they're doing pretty well. Within maybe 3-4 years, they, of course, teething problems are there. So, and again, I think that architecture gives you the flexibility of reinventing yourself at any stage that you want. I have had students who went for their training to maybe Italy, and they say that midway during my training, my architect decided that he wanted to go into winemaking. So he started as a hobby, and then suddenly he opens a small bistro, a small restaurant kind of a thing, and he serves handmade pizza and wine. And I was totally lost. What do I do now? Because I went there for training with him, and he diversifies into wine or something like that. So I think in that sense, because we are flexible like that, because we can look at things we don't have a unidimensional way of thinking. And I think that becomes our greatest asset, that whether we are working with people or working on ourselves, we can reinvent ourselves. Like just like we change the design. For example, the client comes and says, okay, no, I don't want a hotel, I want an office building now. So we quickly reinvent the whole thing. We change the whole thing. I have seen that architects are a lot more flexible, and like they are capable of reinventing themselves at any stage of life, in fact.
True. I agree with that. So that's basically how we all are trained. So yeah, thank you, Deepika. That was really very informative, and how your thoughts put together. Today I would like to invite Deepika Gandhi to co-host the discussion with me. So over to you, Deepika. So two of us, both Deepika will host the...
One with an I, one with a double E.
True.
Okay, so thank you so much. In alphabetical order, I will start. So we will start with Mr. Anish Rakheja. And when I read your portfolio, it sounds really interesting that you are called Coach Anish. Okay, that's a really nice sounding word. I think all architects, by nature, we become coaches, whether it is for our juniors, for our clients, or whatever. But if I give a small introduction, that he's into the corporate world now, and he is specializing in the area of executive coaching and career mentoring. And he's an alumnus of IIT Roorkee, and also interested in astrology, very interestingly. And we will come to that how do they all come together? How do the stars align, as we may say? And basically, Mr. Anish, he's been trying to help people discover I think on a very philosophical side, maybe on a spiritual side, not just like a management coach kind of a thing, to actually delve deeper into themselves and find that connect with nature, maybe find that connect with the cosmos, maybe, and then find your true purpose. So I think it would be best, Mr. Anish, that if you yourself could explain to us what exactly does it entail, what is your target group, and how do you go about, in this very cynical world that we have, how do you go about combining this training that you have had in architecture with this whole spiritual element? Although I think all great architects were spiritual at heart. I mean, it's not possible to create great architecture without finding that connection with nature or with cosmos, or whatever you may call it, whatever name you may give it. So could you please explain to us how you came to this point and what your work entails now?
Anish, you have to unmute. Unmute.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Deepika and Deepika, thanks for inviting me to this panel. So it's a pleasure to be here. So Deepika, you used a word called cynical word. So right now we call this as a VUCA word. So that's the new terminology that's used. And the terminology keeps on changing, but the fact of the matter is that the word is also changing. And we as an architect, I still call myself as an architect. So we are really, I would say we are multidimensional. So the 5 years of training that we get in architecture makes our mind very fertile, and that actually spoils us also. So we are always looking for different options. We are never happy sitting on a chair. We just want to do things very differently. And one of the areas that I'm very curious to work on, I'm actually trying to collect the birth charts of different astrologers or different architects and see from an astrology perspective the common traits, what makes them so different. Okay, how the stars align for an architect. So I've started this journey of collecting some of the birth charts, and the trends are emerging. So it's very interesting. So one of the, maybe very soon you'll see a blog on this one, what the common traits you find from the stars perspective in an architect. So my journey was started. I did my graduation obviously from IIT Roorkee as an architect, then did my post graduation in MBA, and was into the corporate world for many years. So one thing that I realized, that we as an architect with our multidimensional approach, so we are very well fitted to enter into any of the domain, okay, because we are fearless. So we are so used to interacting with all types of people, all strata of people, okay, whether it's in the construction industry, whether you need to work right from the top to the bottom, you need to work on, and what you mentioned, Deepika rightly said, that we interact with different type of people. So that actually makes us fearless, and the confidence that comes in while doing the course, the different type of design submissions that we had to do right from the first year, the 3 days of a design submission, the assignments that we used to get used to be very different from a typical undergraduate course that one would follow. So the seeds are sown at that time when we are in the college to be different, to do things differently. So same way happened with me. The journey started as being an architect, shifted to the corporate world where I worked for close to 2 decades in different positions, and then finally found my calling in coaching, in mentoring, and in astrology. So the model that what I have developed is called an NDP framework, which actually combines the astral findings, the astrology findings with psychometric analysis and the perceived interest to find where the interest of an individual lies. So based on the natural instincts, which comes to the birth charts, based on the perceived interest, which we look at from the psychometric charts, and based on the desired attributes, what a person is looking for, and then trying to identify what the central tendencies are, where the intersection point is coming. So using this model for some time, found it extremely effective. So that's where the mentoring process comes in. So mentoring is primarily for the students that we do. So right from class 10th, grade 10th, till around people who are looking for post-graduation or even at a research level. Then we move on to the coaching area, which is primarily for the professionals. So they require more of a coaching than a mentoring. So that's where the coaching journey side starts for me. And the coaching, what I am into the area is called something called a legacy coaching. So it's what we as an individual are going to leave behind. So who's actually going to cry when we die? And if somebody's going to cry, so why should he cry apart from our loved ones? So what are we leaving behind? What are footprints on the sands is where the coaching is all about, which combines the spiritual part into the coaching arena. Okay, because one of the key questions that comes on in spirituality is the reason for our existence and what is it that we're going to leave behind. So that's where my focus area has been. And that's something which is I'm very passionate about.
Based on what you said, I'm sure, you know, because there is something, you know, we in architecture, we do have something maybe like Vastu or Feng Shui. Of course, your work is very different from that. What I'm trying to ask you is that, you know, people tend to take all of this like a very regressive kind of a thing. And even though I think Vastu is actually a science, and, you know, like I studied it and I found that there was so much of technicality behind it. It's actually a science, not just a mumbo jumbo kind of thing. So when you present this module to people, that, you know, you are taking their perceived interests and their date of birth, because not many people, I think, even now believe in astrology. So what is the typical response that you get when you try to combine these things together?
You know, Deepika, when I started doing this almost a decade back now, I was quite skeptical about it, how the people would take it. And to my surprise, it was very well accepted. Okay. One thing we realized, so some people call it as a meta science. and both Vastu, astrology, these are hardcore science. There's no confusion about it. It's absolutely hardcore science. Now, if you look at Vedas, one of the very high prominent position in the Vedas, it's been given to astrology. So there are two ways of looking at it. Either we say that all these sages that were there, who had spent their lives and lives in terms of writing about astrology, either they were doing something which was not right, or it is our lack of understanding that we cannot understand that. Okay. So if something which has been given such a high prominence in our scriptures, there has to be something in it which we may not understand at this stage. But the surprising part, as I said, Deepika, was the acceptance level by the people has been very high, very, very high. And we did a lot of test cases in terms of the reliability and repeatability index, trying to figure out where the psychometric ends and how astrology comes into play. Both the RNR was extremely high when we combined it with the astrology and psychometric analysis. The results were really, really eye-opener for me also. So it took me years and years to actually be into it, and especially with the background of being from an IIT Roorkee, from an IIT.
Exactly.
So it was even more difficult for me because the grounding that I had, even though being in an architecture discipline, but the whole grounding that we got was more in terms of the analytical approach. So even for me to accept that, admit that, believe into it, took me time. But when I started exploring about it, reading about it, experimenting about it, it was really an eye-opener for me.
Okay, thank you so much, Anish. Now we will quickly go on to Ms. Jessie Jacob, and we will come back to you with related questions, because I think there's some kind of a parallel between what all three panelists are doing. So we'll try to find a common ground. So I would like to introduce Ms. Jessie Jacob, who's the founder of the Fit the Soul. So I think, I mean, that's a very interesting, in fact, I would like to start you on this bit only, that fit the soul means as in we make the soul fit somewhere, or we make something fit into the soul, or we make the soul fit. So if you could start with that question, that you are of course trained and certified as an architect and as a wellness coach. And as we were discussing just before the discussion, that I think in essence, every architect is a wellness coach, because this is what you keep doing. You keep training your masons, you keep motivating your clients, you keep dealing with your students. So in a way, we are all into this business of wellness. And also, I think architecture, the main aim is, of course, empowerment, like what it says in your CV, that your main aim is fitness and empowerment. I think architecture is a very positive kind of a field. It is all about creation, and it is all about positivity. Like there is a joke somewhere that, you know, the only person who feels happy when you flourish is neither your lawyer nor your doctor, but your architect. Okay, so I think that is really true. So why don't you please explain to us exactly what you do and how you go about it, and how you went on to this path from your architectural education.
Hi, can I share screen?
Yes, yeah.
Can you see this?
Yeah.
Sorry, hi folks. So I run Fit the Soul, and what do? We create leaders. So this is just my family. I have 2 kids and a husband, so that's just all of us. Yeah, so what happens when life serves you lemons, you make lemonade. So when I was an architect, I made it all lemonade of architecture. And then one day something snapped in me, and I knew I needed to do something different. So before that, as an architect, I came into Bangalore and set up my practice just when IT was starting. The first technology park, ITPL, was just starting. And for the next 6 buildings, 25% of all the offices were done by us. And so we did corporate, hospitality, and retail. And we were in the top 5 architects. We won multiple awards. We were featured in India Today as one of the 4 women's arenas. But somewhere down the line, I felt that something needed to change. And once that set inside me, what did I do? When the act did not follow the script, I decided to take a hike, a really long hike. That was Everest Base Camp, the picture that you see. And that was my first time I stepped out of my comfort zone, went into something completely unknown. I had high altitude pulmonary edema, I had all of it. But when I was there, I knew I needed to move out of architecture. And that was my first time that I realized that I really needed to step out. And 6 months later, I had closed my practice. 2 months before I turned 50, I closed my architectural practice. And then what did I do? I decided to change my life one step at a time. For starters, 10 years ago, I was really unfit. At 45, I was 14 kilos more than what I am today. I was obese, unwell inside. So one step at a time, I started to work on my fitness. I started to work on my life, on my diet, on my quality time with my friends, with the people I cared for. So one step at a time, I decided to change my life. By the time I was 50, I knew I was no longer going to be an architect. 2 months before I turned 50, I closed my practice. Then what did I do? And then I started climbing more and more mountains. Okay, then you have Kilimanjaro there, you have Ladakh, you have Mount Kinabalu, you have something in Scotland. You have so many, all of these are the different things that I've done. Skydiving. I was scared to get onto a cable car. And here I am, parasailing, paragliding, skydiving, living in a snow, in a nice hotel, driving a snowmobile. I've never driven a scooter in the plains, a snowmobile over the frozen Barren Sea. Really, I mean, I think I just let go of every cord that held me, every cord that held me back. So when you say fit the soul, what does fit the soul? You let your soul go where it needs to be and just let it fit. All the rest of it will fit into it. All the stars will align. You just need to let go. And as I was doing this, Fit the Soul was born. All of these pictures are pictures of my treks. This is Ladakh in minus 30 degrees Celsius. In January, okay. And the only footprints we would see there were the pug marks of the elusive snow leopard. We never saw the snow leopard, but that was it. And as I kept doing this, I knew that I needed to do this. And many, many women were following me. And they said, Jessie, how do we get there? And that's how Fit the Soul was born. Fit the Soul was born to create leaders, to help women break the cords that hold them, set them free, and let them soar. I really want every woman to break that glass ceiling, to soar so high that, you know, your soul is just out there flying. It can fit anywhere in any space that it needs to go. And as I was going through this, I realized if I had to give a message, what is it? Each one of us need to write our wellness story. What does our wellness story mean? Many of us are architects, many of us are engineers, doctors, we do different things, but are we happy doing this? When I quit architecture, there were so many senior friends of mine who told me, Jessie, you have wasted an architecture seat. Those days, in Kerala, the only college with architecture was CET, College of Engineering, Trivandrum. Today, there are many, many colleges. And it was so hard to get in there for architecture. They said, you waste. I said, no. 19 years, I worked as an architect. I had my practice. I had 35 people working for me at JJ Architects Private Limited. And so when I closed it, I said, I didn't waste anything. But you need to write your wellness story, each one of you. And who are the characters in your story? What does it talk about? And where are we going? When you start writing that, you realize sometimes some things in your life, the season is over. It's okay. Architecture, it's 5.5 years since I quit architecture. And I haven't missed it for a day. When I meet many of my associates, Featherlight and all of those guys, they say, my God, Jessie, I can't believe you're not an architect because you were eating, sleeping, drinking architecture. I said, yes, I was. But trust me, I haven't missed you guys for even a day. And I can't believe it myself that I haven't missed architecture for a day. But I realized my season was over. And today my season is to help watch women and men break the glass ceiling. And I just love what I'm doing. And I'm just so filled with passion in what I do. And that's what you need to do. Just remember, it doesn't matter what you do. And we help people move their careers. I have lots of my ex-employees who come to me and say, oh, ma'am, you know what? I'm doing this, but I want to do something else. I say, yeah, okay, come. So I work with them for 4 or 5 months and we help them move. But many of them are working in architecture itself. They want to move their sphere of practice. And we just do that. You just need to work through this to move to something that you're more passionate about. Many of us are scared. I have architects who say, Jessie, I don't know. I haven't done anything other than architecture for the last 50 years. These are very senior architects. And they say, I don't know. Every morning I wake up and I think of you. And I said, how did Jessie do it? Can I do it? I said, come to me, baby. I will teach you how to do this. But you need to just do this. One day you need to take that bold step and jump off the boat. When you jump off the boat, you will learn how to swim to survive. Otherwise, you will always stay there and keep on wondering what happens if you jump out. So what do? First of all, write down, what do you believe in? And who are you? We all have this this face that we are, the public face of Jessie or Deepika or Rakesh, all of them. We have different faces, but who are we? What are we inside? What would you like to be? Who would you like to be? Write that down and work towards it. That will take you to that freedom of being able to cut those strings that hold you back and soar high. Thank you. And this is again another part of Ladakh. Beautiful. Untrodden road. Go, set on those paths and find yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. I think we can say that you have actually scaled new heights, in every sense, not just in your career or whatever. 2 questions for you. One is, as you were saying that what was it about your, was it architecture, or do you think that if you had been in any other job, maybe you were into engineering, or if you were in a management job, if you had done an MBA, do you think it was specifically architecture that sort of you had your fill of, or of this whole life of running after this like a commercial kind of a success? I mean, what drove you away from your practice?
Okay, so first let me get back to architecture. I loved my practice. I loved doing what I was doing. So as an architect, I loved every moment of it. Mm-hmm. Okay, but what drove me away, at some point of time, I needed to move out. I just felt that my season was over. I had been there, done it all. And it started with my running marathons, and then it started with my climbing mountains. And that first Everest base camp, when I climbed that's the time that I really knew that I needed to move on. And that was April of 2014, December 31st, 2014, Jessie Jacobs with JJ Architects closed forever.
Okay. But what do you have to say about people? Of course, sometimes I feel, of course, it's all in the mind, that whether you feel you have these restrictions or not. But there are some people who actually feel that they can't afford, for financial reasons, for social security, for other reasons, that they can't just really, make that switch so easily, that there are many other factors, that people dependent on them, they have other responsibilities. So what advice do you give to them? How do they make that switch?
Okay, so a recent book I read is a book by Josh Kaufman. It's about 20 hours to acquire a skill. So it talks about the ability to upskill yourself in 6 different spheres in a year. In fact, I've made myself a target of 6 different upskilling that I need to do this year. So what happens is that we all do something, we are at 100% there. And we all think, can I jump off from 100%? No, you cannot jump off from 100%. Mm-hmm. Financially, socially, emotionally, you cannot. So what happens? Everything else is 0. You start building those up. And as you keep building those up, this starts coming down. And somewhere it becomes a 50-50. When it crosses that 50 is the time to make that move. So you don't just make a move from one day, say, okay, come on, tomorrow, I'm not an architect. You can't. You have to support your family. You have to do many things. Even for all your crazy capers, you need money. So then what do? You start thinking through it, start working on it. And that Josh Kaufman book is beautiful to teach you how you can upskill yourself in anything. Okay. And I've got a list of 6 things I'm going to upskill. And one is learning French. I've already joined Alliance Française for an A1 French course. I started this week and, I'm going to go through it. So like that, whether it's language, whether it is art, whether it is, wall climbing is another thing that I've signed myself up for because I really want to do some rock climbing. So there are different things you want to do. So do it. don't be scared. As you keep doing it, the fear of failure goes away. And when that fear of failure goes away, it is replaced by courage. When you have courage, you also have vulnerability. Every person in this group who have done something very different know that when they did it, there was always a vulnerability, the fear inside. It's okay, but go.
Fear of
Do
being
it. So pick this up from zero and start moving it up and moving this. And then when you come there, take that jump, take the leap.
Thank you so much. That was so inspiring. We'll of course come back to you. Now we move on to Ms. Tanya Khanna, who is again an architect, and she has 15 years of experience in the corporate communications and strategy within architecture, design, and real estate, and of course the media domain also, which is becoming so important now. So Tanya, if you could tell us yourself about what your work entails and what again made you make the switch from hardcore architecture, from a practice or from working in a big firm to starting this thing, which I think all architects do indulge in bits and pieces, but not as a full-term kind of thing and not at such a professional level. So could you please tell us a little about that?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. Before I sort of answer your questions, I'm going to quickly present something.
Yeah.
And that will sort of lay the basis for, sorry, give me a second. The presentation. Can you all see?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'll start with, this is what started as a passion project a really, really long time ago. And when I started out my career, actually I was in school. I had to pick a course. My dad wanted me to do medicine, which is obviously the most respectable and sort of, it was the best profession I could have picked out for myself, but I really did not want to do medicine. And for me, the only two options were journalism or architecture. And at that point, when I told I remember he was really upset with me for years. And he said, okay, if you've decided and you're not going to, he said, what I'm going to ask you to do is, I will help you in, there were very few architecture colleges and I was based in Delhi. They didn't really want, as an 18-year-old, they didn't want me to move out of Delhi. So he said, I'll take you for all the architecture entrances, but you promise me that you will appear for all the medicine entrances. You can always do journalism later in life, but you can never go back to architecture. So let's go with architecture. And that's where I started. And and I went on to do 5 years of architecture. And this started off as a passion project. I was really, just give me a second, sorry. So for all of us as humans, perception is a very important part of our daily life. How do we read objects around us? Whether it is art, how do we recognize it? Even popular cars, how do we distinguish them? So we all are driven by our eyes and what we see. And in that context, there is also landmark architecture, right? How do we perceive the architecture around us? This is the architecture that we all know of. Even as people who are not architects, this is what we see around us. And that's what people think is architecture. But our daily life is actually influenced by the perception of our surroundings, not so much the surroundings by themselves. This is driven by obviously marketing, advertising, and many other words that the architects actually really hate. Victor Hugo said that the city is a writing and the users of the city are the readers. However, the stuff that we all read does not really talk about architecture or the built environment. This is the stuff that we read in India most often. And architecture almost always gets talked about within the closed confines of design media. So it is only architects who read about other architects. And architecture is almost never ever read outside the profession. Buildings are rarely ever sold to us. We are never told why they are important, right? The building down the road from wherever you are right now, you probably don't know who the architect is, unless when we are told about a building. For example, we are told that, okay, look, this is the Taj Mahal. Look, this is the Times Square. Look, this is the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Otherwise, we don't know architecture. I mean, like I said, you all can think about the one building that is 5 blocks of 5 houses away from you. And in all likelihood, you wouldn't know who the architect is. But in our own minds as architects, we think, we are really shaping the built environments and so on, and we play a very integral role. We never really pause to read the architecture that we are actually surrounded by. Unfortunately, though, not all architecture is by star architects. And therefore, it is never packaged and sold to us as wow architecture. And in that context, Indian architecture is rarely ever talked about. Forget understood or, the design intent is never really communicated. We are a very honest, ethical profession, and hence the right thing to do is to not talk about our work. In fact, most of us, I think, through our schools, through our years of education at architecture school, are told that, okay, this concept and all is fine. How do you actually make a building? And this is what was really sort of bothering me. And I said that, okay, we all keep complaining of the pitiful state of our built environment. We all keep complaining our cities are bad, in India, everything is shit. But as professionals, we don't even engage in discourse. We don't talk about our work. City building is critical, right? And our cities are actually shaped by architects like you and me, not just the master architects. Therefore, in order to celebrate the city and its architecture, as architects, it is important that we write our own history and not leave it to a few icon makers or a selected few who choose to talk about their work or their work gets talked about. The time when I started this project, Indian architecture was not, being talked about in the Dezeen's and the art dailies of the world also. There was the same old Rajawal, Charles Corbusier. This is what was Indian architecture. So what I thought was that it is important that architecture, therefore, needs to be conveyed, communicated, and curated, not just for architects, but for the common man and society at large. Those who are actually engaged in making the places that we inhabit, 99% of the time do not talk about it. This needs to change. So imagine if the city was an art gallery where every building comes with descriptive text. You go to an exhibition, you go to an art exhibition, there's always a little small plaque there which mentions the date and the year in which the art piece was commissioned, who is the artist, and a single line description of what the artist tried to do. Now, imagine if that was to happen for architecture, right? It's almost like this. This is never going to happen, right? Buildings do not display or telecast their own stories, and there is no gallery for architecture. So as designers, we must focus on who we are communicating to. We must focus on the designer and design, and not so much the I in the design. And it is therefore important to showcase the creative capital. We must focus on content and not just ourselves. And therefore, dialogue must be shaped around architecture and not just the gherkin, not just the popular architecture that we all see. Typically, architects only talk about architecture in closed basements and, like closed events, which are meant for other architects. What we need to do is we need to take architecture out to the open. Tools are all available to us. We needn't shout. It's not that complicated. And all this talking is not just, to be known as architects, but it is for you, for me, and for the future of our cities. So let's talk about architecture. And I think that's where sort of I started. And the idea was that, okay, we all, even right now, the space that I'm sitting in, the rooms that you are sitting in, the houses, the offices, wherever you sit, some architect has created it. You probably don't know who that person is, unless you are all architects, so you may have done your own homes, but most often people don't know that. So that is what sort of led me to start Episode, where our prime intent was to make Indian architecture more democratic, where it is not, getting featured or getting talked about, or even conveying what you've done through your projects is not limited to a selected few. It is not something that is available to large commercial firms. Today, if I own a house, I should be able to talk about it. In fact, my favorite sort of thing when I used to travel, not anymore, was that, abroad, every building comes with a little plaque of who the architect is. and in what year was the building done. So I actually go around taking pictures of those, and I'm trying to sort of capture as many as possible, hoping that someday, we can implement the same in India. And so Epicel started with that. Today, we are a team of writers, graphic designers, media people. We help firms, anybody who is in the AEC domain, architecture, engineering, construction design, or product design, furniture design. We help them with planning their content, curating it, documenting it, and then identifying what are the tools for outreach. And outreach, not just to talk to other architects, but really for design to be understood by the common man, for architecture to be understood by the common man. Our newspapers today rarely talk about the built environment. They talk about real estate. They don't talk about architecture. Our aim is to change that. And somewhere I think it's an ongoing process. It's not going to be 100%, but we are there.
Thank you so much for that very, very interesting look into what you're doing. And it is quite amazing because funnily, I am doing something similar in Chandigarh, but on a different level, because here we have the same problem that we have all, like, it's a heritage city with these heritage buildings, and people are not even aware. They just know Corbusier, as you were saying, they just know Corbusier, and everything gets put under this box of Corbusier. Ki Corbusier nahi kiya hoga, jo bhi building hai. So it's such a challenge, although there were so many Indian architects, who made such wonderful buildings, and people are not aware of that. So in fact, it's quite amazing that what you are doing maybe for practicing architects today, I am basically having to do for architects who can't speak for themselves. So basically now I am having to translate their architecture and, demystify, as I keep saying, this whole architectural, what people say it's a jargon. Why is the Capitol complex like that? What building, this building? So, in fact, that I think is a wonderful thing, as you're saying, because we keep discussing this concept of heritage because I'm a part of the Intact Chandigarh chapter also. And this is what we keep realizing, that till people, the common man, the common student, a school child, till they are not made aware about architecture, they are not made aware of what it entails or what this building is, why is it great, people don't even look at it for a second time. And and when you tell them, they can't look away. The best thing is that once you tell them, okay, this is what was interesting about this building. Like, for example, just recently I took, we have a new director tourism in Chandigarh now. So she went with me to the Capitol complex, and it was her first visit. And I just took her on a tour that, okay, these are the buildings and whatever. And she said something so amazing that, this is the kind of place that if a school child is brought over here, he or she would definitely want to become an architect, or at least half of them. So I think that is what you are trying to do, to decode architecture. But I just have one query, like nowadays, it's not as if architects don't have platforms to promote themselves. In fact, I think there's too much promotion happening. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, if you open Instagram, if you open Facebook, you have so many pictures of projects under construction, which have already been made. And you have so many magazines, and now you have the e-platform. And sorry to say, but sometimes I feel that we're actually promoting mediocrity. Like, some of the projects are, I think, not even inspirational, and they should not be in a magazine or even an esteemed magazine. And it just seems that someone really pushed it hard that please get my project into a magazine or into an international magazine. And everyone wants content. All these magazines want content. I think that is the flip side, the other side of what you're talking about. So how do you manage that? Like, how do you manage that thing of not pushing out architecture, which is not really up to the mark, maybe?
So I fundamentally believe, right? And I don't know how many of you will disagree with me, but I fundamentally believe that every architect has a story. Every building that is created, there is some story behind it, right? Our job is more of a curator. We help them curate that content and put it out. Our job is not to help them get featured. Getting featured is the job of a PR agency, right? That's not what we do. We, in fact, help them tie in their narrative and make it crisper, so that, okay, every building cannot be sustainable. Why are we saying that it's sustainable? Today, the buzzword is sustainability, right? That, oh, we've done a green building. Your building is not green, so let's not talk about it being green. Maybe your building is okay in terms of planning. Maybe that is what you should put out. What you've enabled is a functional plan. That is your story versus somebody else who's focused on daylight. Maybe that is all that is there to your story. What is your story? Typically, architects and architectural firms are too busy in creating work, just producing work to run the office, to sustain the office, to make sure they're delivering buildings. we are here to help them step back and identify who is it, who are they, what do they want to be, where do they want to be, and then also attract work that they want to attract.
Exactly.
I mean, a lot of our clients say that, you know what, we did homes, but we don't want to do homes, or we did institutes, but we don't want to do institutes. We don't get this. So if you know who you are, you will be able to push out on, while Instagram is available for everybody. What do I want to be on Instagram?
Yeah.
I don't want to just put out image. Today, especially in the post-COVID world, there is no dearth of social media. Everybody is on Instagram. I mean, when we started out, LinkedIn was, nobody even spoke about LinkedIn. I even had clients who would say, why be on LinkedIn? Today, clients come to us and say, you know what, we want 10,000 followers on LinkedIn. So the game also keeps changing. You have to keep innovating. But who is it? I mean, the real challenge is as a practice, and I really sort of, I agreed with what Jessie was saying, actually. I can imagine what you went through, because I think I also go through that a lot of times. Who am I and what do I want to be as an architect? What is the work that I want to produce? Do I want to be at the mercy of my clients? Or do I want to be really making an impact in the built environment? While, yes, there is so much mediocrity out there, there is also good content, good buildings don't get even seen and talked about.
Yeah.
My job is to make sure that real architecture that is making impact should at least be talked about instead of the same 10 firms being talked about.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that is something that we all, I mean, I think as architects, we want to eventually help in creating a better built environment through whatever we do, right? We want to make better cities, we want to make better spaces. Even if you're mentoring people, you want to create good leaders, right? We're all doing that. So I think that obviously one needs to be aware of who they are and what they want to be, and then you sort of set out on the right direction.
Yeah, I think I sort of, understand what you're saying, because as I was saying, just today we had a design studio with 4 semester students. And rather than starting with the design, I started with asking them, okay, what has your journey been till now? And, there's this conception, as you're saying, that everyone has to be a star designer, that you have to produce these really, really amazing designs. So I was trying to tell them that, no, there will always be a client who wants a really outstanding, iconic kind of a building. But there'll always be a client who wants a very simple, functional, subdued, so each one of us finds our own type of client, and you don't have to be afraid of that. If you are more of a practical person, if you can work out the nitty-gritty of things very well. So this one girl had a problem that, okay, my forms are always very good and they get appreciated, but I can't fit in the functions. I can't take the technical part of it. So I said, okay, maybe you will get a client, who goes more for, it's like fashion design. Okay, there'll be some person who will be willing to wear a thing, even if it is uncomfortable, as long as it makes a statement. And then there'll be people who only want to go for Fab India. And then there'll be one set of people who only want to wear comfort clothes. They just can't wear anything which is not comfortable. And you have designers of each type. So that is what I was telling them exactly today. That in architecture also,
we get architects who want to make statements, who do statement work. We get architects who do simple work. We get architects who do completely different institutional infrastructural work.
Yeah.
Our job is to
help them find the client,
anchor that, and then put that out, not just put any random content.
So I think that's exactly what it comes down to, that you have to follow your own path and you have to identify what is your strength and not get swayed by what is there in the market right now, what is the trend right now, and you have to just be honest with yourself, I think. Yes. So and that is how you grow, actually, I think. So I think it's been wonderful and talking to all of you. So over to you now, Madam Deepika Tuteja, and how do you want to take it further now?
Yeah, so first of all, let me say that I find a lot of resonance with you, Tanya, because my journey started in a very, very similar manner, though initial part was a little flipped, like I wanted to go in for medicine, but my mom was not too keen that I should enter the medical field. And if I'm an architect, it's more because of her. So, and journalism was also a part of it. And I'm talking about 70s. I joined architecture in 1977. So I was very passionate about writing and journalism. So I got into LSR, English honors. But it so happened that I joined architecture, and I think few weeks down, our Professor Bhatti announced one day that students who want to leave can, leave, and everything will be refunded. And I was so happy. I came back home and I told my mom that, I want to shift to doing English honors. And somehow, I don't know, we were the very simpler ones in our generation. So I listened to what she had to say. She said, you can, the same thing like your dad said, that journalism can be pursued later, but architecture should come first. So that's how here I am. Along with my architecture, I still pursued my passion for writing, and very early in my career, I was invited, in fact, by A+T to be the assistant editor. That was beginning of my career, and I did it for 18 months, and then I joined my husband's practice, and then it always was at the back of my mind to to get into doing something on my own. And that's how then in 2014, then I started this Innoware with a similar concept of what you were saying, that I always thought that, there are so many young architects or whoever, like whichever generation, beyond metropolitans, who are never, their identities are never revealed. They don't get a platform. They don't get that kind of information and knowledge. So that was my aim, to publish about their work or whatever they had to contribute to writing. So it's not always that, in magazines that you read about articles written by, it's only handful of people who, who author the write-ups. So that's why I said I find a lot of resonance in what you said. So I have a few questions for all three of you. So I'll start with Anish. Very interestingly, Anish, I still couldn't kind of get to a point that where, what kind of journey would it be for somebody like a student? You said that you mentor students from class 10 to maybe post-graduation, that how, when somebody comes to you, what is the totality, like what is the total journey, and how do you figure out that, what is the procedure you are going to carry on? So I would like to know that. This is basically for my own benefit, plus the benefit of others who would be watching.
Sure. Deepika, the typical way today a field is decided for a student is it starts from class 10th, when they need to identify a stream going into class 11th. What we realized, most of the time the stream is selected based on elimination, then by a choice. Hey, I can't do maths, so maths is out. Science is too difficult, science is out. Humanities, hey, I don't want to mug up too many things, so let me take humanities. What's left? Okay, accounts bacha hai, let me take accounts, let me take economics, or vice versa. So most of the time, the decisions are based on elimination from 10th to 11th. Okay, and then what happens is you have taken certain subjects. First student has taken certain subjects for 11th, then he reaches class 12th. So now the whole chaos, the confusion starts coming in, because post 12th you need to do something. So the way the current process happens is that you take the first college possible that you get, based either on the percentage or based on whatever you can crack. So take the best possible options in terms of the college. Then the next thing happens is, okay, let me do my college, then I'll figure out what am I going to do with my life. So 3 years or 4 years into the college, let me first take the first job possible in the campus placement, so that at least first job is secured, and then I'll figure out what I'm supposed to do. And it goes on and on and on and on. And the frustration level keeps on building. At one point of time, either the person would just go through a different life crisis, would just break down, or would give it up in frustration. So now the process, what we are trying to do here at Crestcon, we are trying to flip around the process where we are saying, forget about the stream from 10 to 11th, forget about the college. Let's first talk about which is the area that's rightly suitable for you. So do a profiling of the student, look at the way the attributes lined up, trying to identify what the right field could be to at least make a start. Careers will change many a times. Okay, when we are into the working profession, people would move. Almost all of us on the panel or that we are on this call, we have changed our profession, and there's nothing new about it. Okay, because most of the people would have gone through a change. Somebody would find a passion into something else. Somebody would find, there would be multiple reasons for a change, but the change would happen. You need to hold the thread at least at one end. So identify that end, and that's what we do through our framework. We help in identifying that start point of the field. And then it's a mechanical calculation to be into that field. What are the colleges required? To go into one of those colleges, what is it that you require, the subjects that you require, the streams that you require. So then the roadmap is absolutely clear. The direction is clear, because today the other confusion is with the information flow that happens through the different ways, through the different medias. The over information also leads to a lot of confusion. Okay, so there are some popular trends that would happen with the students would like to follow without really giving us a thought what really that entails, what happens in the future. So in a way, it's something like what happens with all of us. Some of us were driven by our parents to get into a particular stream. So the story that what Tanya shared and you shared, so my story is almost something similar in terms of how I joined architecture. But now the intent is at least we have these ways of identifying the right stream, at least to have some clarity about what can be a good start point. And that's where the combination of the psychometric analysis, the birth charts, the different questionnaires, the way there is a scientific way that we can at least identify the areas where one can look at start of the career. So that's what we are into. And we've been very successfully using that model. So we had many cases where a student comes in thinking about certain options. More than that, the parent comes in telling us, not even thinking about, telling us, hey, this is what my kids needs to do, or this is what we believe is good in. So those are the things that we try to overcome, work with the students, mentor them, and actually counsel the parents to sometimes please shut up and listen to the students, what they are, to your kid, what they are saying, listen to them. Okay, because there might be a lot of value what the child is trying to say. So that's the area that we are working on, helping in identifying the direction. And once the direction is identified, the journey is smoother.
Thank you. That was great, and a good way, I think, so that there aren't any regrets for anyone, either the parents or the students. So it kind of reminds me.
Yeah, more than the parents, because parents have their own journey.
Yeah.
So it's the journey of the child that we are more worried about, more concerned about, because he's starting his life journey. And if there is a guidance, there is a proper direction that can be given to them, or at least can be discussed with them, that would go a long way in terms of personal satisfaction. We've been talking about writing our own story, writing our own journey. So that journey can only be written when there is a clarity about the journey and there is a peace in the mind. Otherwise, it's going to come out only as a chaos.
True. That is true. Thank you, Anish. So over to you, Tanya. How important is, though you've talked a great deal on that, so is communications and PR to architects in practice? And what is the future in this field for young architects on both the sides, whether the architects want to do the PR and the communication or the other way around? They want to have at a younger age to be connected to, you know.
So, well, I'll start with the second question first. It is an important thing, especially in a post-COVID world where interactions are limited, physical meetings are limited. When today so many young practitioners, in fact, I get this query most often that how do we get work, right? How do you? And I tell them, I said, have you even told your friends and family that you're available to work? That it is okay to let them know that I'm going to start by doing a room design first. Everybody does not get an institute project to do on the first day of setting up practice, right? So it is, how do you get work? Until you don't start talking about your work, you will not get work. So it is important to be able to engage with other people, to document your own work, and really, we all know that the number of architects graduating every year in India, it's a huge number. How do you distinguish yourself from another person? I have my own strengths, you have your own strengths, somebody else will have their own strengths. It is important to be able to push out what you're good at, right? So, and communications is an exercise that helps you identify, it helps you introspect, what is it that I can do? What am I good at? And that is what I will push out there. I will not just try and be somebody who I'm not. My ideal client is coming to me because of who I am. So, there is huge potential. It is extremely relevant today. And I see that, I think the future is really promising, actually. And I saw that even Apurva is here. And one big part of communications is the ability to write. And Apurva has been running a very successful writing course. Even I've been running, and we see so many architects. Apurva, you can pitch in here. We see so many people who just want to be able to write better so that they can communicate their thoughts better. Right? So that, I think there is a huge possibility. What is new today is actually, it's been around forever. The only thing was that it was a very sort of inorganic, informal industry. Today it's becoming more formalized. What firms need to do is they need to identify, why are they going to undertake this activity? Is it purely from a positioning perspective? Is it because they want to, find access to better opportunities? Or is it simply because they want to document their work and understand who they are and then attract the right sort of work? Then they can pick out, which is your first question, then they can identify what sort of a communication strategy will work for them. And then what are the right tools? If today as a firm, I'm doing infrastructure projects, I don't really need to be on Instagram. What am I trying to do? But if I'm trying as a practice, as a 30-year-old practice or as a 20-year-old practice, if I'm trying to get better talent, then I need to be on Instagram. The idea is to step back and say that, okay, this is what I want to achieve, whether I'm a 1-person practice or a 100-people practice. I want to achieve this for my communications plan, and then work backwards and adopt a strategy.
Right.
I answered.
So I think, yes, very right. Yeah.
Deepika, am I allowed to ask a question here? Because there's something which has been going in my mind. And would it be okay if I ask something?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sure. So I was just wondering, and listening to Tanya, listening to Jesse, listening to you, and even going back to my life story, how I entered into architecture, because it was, again, not by choice, but by actually, I rebelled against the whole concept of doing engineering, because everybody was an engineer in my family. And I didn't want to do engineering, but I had to go to Roorkee due to some reasons. So I opted for architecture, not knowing anything what architecture was all about. I hear about Tanya. She wanted to become something else. She wanted to do her English majors. Okay, Jessie, she did architecture, left architecture to follow her different passion. I hear you, Deepika. So I was just wondering, many of us who are here are actually here where we didn't wanted to do architecture. We ended up doing architecture. We ended up moving out of architecture. Is it the reason why we see what Tanya talked about? The Indian architects are not being talked about too much in the global world, or maybe they are not able to make that much of a mark, which European architects they do. Is it because the trend still continues that the people are entering into architecture not by choice, but by force or but by limitations? So that's where the quality of architects, the buildings, the quality of architecture that's coming out from India is really not up to the mark. Is there any correlation here that we see? Because if I look at my batch of architects that graduated with me, not even one of them is in architecture now. Okay, when I look at my 2 senior batches, or at least 2 senior batches that I'm aware of, hardly anyone is in architecture. And we all are from a premier institute, one of the top institute in the country, and none of us are practicing architecture. So where is this leading us to? I'm just wondering about that.
Can I say something? I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I would just like to make one. I don't think that I did not want to do architecture. My career choice was architecture and journalism. I took architecture up. It's not that I did not want to do it, and it was for the lack of other options. And I'd also go ahead and say maybe I think Indian architecture has actually made a mark globally. So it's not like we are because so many of us join and quit, and hence Indian architecture. I'm not sure if there is a correlation there. I think the real challenge is possibly that in our, and I don't know if I'm correct in saying this, but in the way we undergo our 5 years of education, while it trains us to do a lot, I think somewhere it misses the reality of what running a practice is. Somewhere there is that gap, and I think maybe that is the reason why a lot of us just burn out and leave. And I did not burn out and leave. I did practice as an architect. I also worked at A+D, like Deepika was saying earlier. My first job was there. But then I kept going back to practice. In fact, for the longest time, my hurdle was that everybody, all my mentors, my bosses, everybody told me that, you know what, you're really good at this. Why don't you just devote 100% of your time on this? Even at my last job, I was heading communications for one of the largest practices in the country. My bosses kept insisting that, spend all your time with. It took me a really long time to say that, okay, you know what, I am not going to practice. I think the real challenge is there, that the allied disciplines have not evolved as an industry that is strong enough to help people find their niche. There is either practice or there is academia. The middle ground, the middle line is where we need to step up our game in India, where we need to train people. And this is a great initiative in that regard, where we need to train people. I think Ethos is running a lot of programs as well. You're training young architects to better manage their practice, how to make a pitch to a client, because that is the real job of an architect. The real how many freshers end up going to sites and actually managing work? Architects are great managers, but that is a skill set that doesn't get talked about. The burnout is what happens because you are multi-managing so many things when you're running a practice, and then you say, okay, you know what, I'm done. What do I do next? A lot of times, there's so many conversations happening around women in architecture, right? Because women in architecture tend to leave beyond a certain age. Why is that? Because practice does not enable them the opportunities to manage both. And that's when the burnout happens. And of course, these are random instances that I'm just sort of feeding in. But the real thing is that outside of India, the education teaches you to do not just drawing, detailing, and the delivery of the project. There is a lot more that really goes behind a practice.
That's my point.
We need to understand and spend more time doing it and train the young architects. I mean, even when it comes to writing, we were never told to write about our architecture. We were always told that you draw and you convey. There is no, words are not a means to communicate. Today, it is an acceptable means to communicate.
I would love
Yeah,
to share a lot of things here,
but
but for the sake of the time, I'll hand it over back to Deepika, because I think so I don't want this conversation to go in a very different direction. So over to
no,
you.
it's a good conversation. Yes, I'm sure all must be pressed with time, but I just want to add, first of all, I'm not out of practice. So this in-awe is kind of separate, say, offshoot of my practice, and I'm still into that. And although it may not have been by choice doing architecture, but I love architecture. So
Yeah,
it kind of, you can't get away from it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm doing some very interesting works, and yeah, so it's like now beyond architecture, as I said, that architecture has many areas where you can, you know, do. It's not only creating buildings, it's kind of urban planning is part of, you know, once you are a trained architect, so you become sensitive to all your surroundings. So yes, whatever the discussion, it wasn't meant to say that this in-awe is not being an architect, but it is, yes, certainly a very big passion with me to, you know, to communicate, as Tanya was saying. And I have a little suggestion that what I observed as a external faculty, I did 1 year, 2 semesters, took design studios. First, I took design studio for 4th year, second semester, and then second year. So what my observation was that, like Tanya, you said that architects are not trained to write. With so many colleges and thousands of students, and how they end up going there, not mainly out of passion, but could be out of compulsion as well, because, you know, as Anish was saying, or we all know that parental pressure is so much that you have to get into a professional course. So many are, you know, they land up doing architecture, but that communication skills should definitely be taught in colleges, because what I did was that when you call them to explain their design one by one on one, they are very good at, you know, they manage that, whatever that they want to explain their design. But I made sure, because I saw that, you know, they were not that confidence was not there. Even in that 4th year students, that confidence, they were lacking that confidence. Public speaking is something which is, which they lack. So I used to call them and tell them to explain their design to the whole class, in front of the whole class, a single project. So that's where their, you know, that gap is there. So whether in words or in vocal, that confidence has to be instilled. And I think that will take them a long way in establishing their own practice, because basically when you are on a client meeting, that's how you are going to, you know, you're going to talk about your design. You're not going to write. Writing is one thing, they can write, but that the confidence of speaking is something which has to be instilled right at the college level, I think. So I don't know if anybody wants to.
I have to leave. Yeah. I need to leave now, because I got another session starting at 4:30. So
Okay.
So I'm going to take leave from the panel, and just wanted to thank all of you for having me here, and Deepika, especially to you for inviting me. But I just need to step out now, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I have a question for Jesse, so we'll continue, no problem. And then we'll wrap up soon. Much. Okay, thanks. So very quickly, Jesse, how and when you realized of your switch? So this is the last question. After that, I would request Deepika, you to conclude the session after this.
Yeah, like I said, when at 45, when I knew I had to do something else with my life, and I started exploring those passions, like I said, those passions kept building up. And somewhere down the line, I realized that I was no longer as passionate as I was before about architecture. Just to clarify, I worked as an architect for 19 years. So it's not like when he said we didn't work. I 19 years. And like I said, I won so many laurels, so many awards. We won a trip for 3 to Singapore. We won a Bell helicopter ride. We won, all kinds of prizes and awards for just finishing projects on time, within budget. So it wasn't that, but somewhere when you start feeling that that burning desire to perform, to do things is reducing a little bit, start listening to that voice. Start thinking, what do you believe in? Where do you want to be? Who do I want to be? At that point of time, if your answer is changing, it's okay. It's not a mistake. It's just time for you to start looking at it and start planning ahead. So that's what happened to me.
That's nice. Thank you. So Deepika, would you like to have
I think what the whole discussion has been about, and I think the biggest takeaway has been, which I keep telling my students all the time. In fact, it's very important, like as Jesse was also saying, that it's important that students should be made aware. We are actually sort of preaching to the converted right now. We are talking to each other who have already taken these decisions, who have already been, forthright with ourselves, been honest with ourselves, and taken some other path or taken some other leaning. But I think that the common denominator over here is ultimately architecture, because we are used to seeing things from all angles. As I said, we are not unidimensional. Architecture does not train you to be unidimensional. You're always exploring new options. One is not working out, you go on to the next option and the next option. I think that is what maybe is not our weakness, but that is what our strength is. And if our students were taught that, I think to take a very different example, like they say that the best relationships are the ones where people know that they have a certain amount of freedom. The more restrictive a relationship, the more likely it is to break up. I think in architecture, because it allows you so much of freedom and leeway, and if students know that there is an option that I don't just have to become a star designer, I could become a communications person, I could become a wellness coach, I could go into 3D modeling, I could, go into journalism. If we taught our students that, they would not make a complete break from architecture. It would look like a much more attractive field, a much more wholesome, because this is what it's all about, that nowadays people want to actually explore every part of their personalities, whether it is writing or reading or anything like that. So I think the more we tell our students, because I've been in teaching for a long time, and I myself have seen that looking ahead to a life of monotony of just meeting clients and getting buildings made, that may not seem very fulfilling to many students who may have other pursuits. So when we have people like Jesse over here, who says that you have to keep upping your other passions so that they come at par, I think that is a very important message that we need to bring out to our students. And I hope that we will again have a session like this, wherein we will be able to have more students on board. Maybe we could have it on a weekend or in the evening sometime, where it is very convenient for more students to join in. We contact the schools directly, the schools of architecture directly, or maybe we tie up with Council of Architecture, who knows, so that, because it's a common cause. I think what all of us are doing is basically taking a different path, but all with the same starting point.
And the same love.
With the same love and the same passion. So it's not as if we are betraying our mother profession and going into other professions. And I read a very interesting book, Homo Deus, okay, in which it says that after some time people will start living till 150 years of age, maybe. So it says that once you know that you're going to live till 150 years, would you think of your career in the same way? So maybe at the age of 50, I may say, okay, bahut ho gaya architecture, now I want to become a doctor, now I want to become a lawyer, or vice versa. So I think we are already doing that, because as life expectancy is increasing, we're not looking to retire at 58. No one is looking to retire at 58. We are in fact thinking that the best is going to start at that. I think that is also changing the way we are looking at our careers and at our lives.
True.
So all that, needs to be put across to students, that you're not getting trapped into one thing. In fact, you are being trained to go out into the world and be this multitasker who can actually do 100 different things now. And to other architects also, who just because they could not make a practice flourish, have given up on architecture. I think this is a very important lesson, and I think that is the biggest takeaway we have today, that You have to follow your passion, because architecture gives you 100 ways in which you could fulfill yourself.
Right. True. That is. Thank you, Deepika, for being the co-host, and it was really interesting. And if we all think of another date, we can carry on this discussion from here and maybe add a few more panelists. While being in the session, I remembered, a few others who were not practicing architecture, but they are doing wonders to wherever they are.
Yeah.
So they can be the talk can continue. Yeah, Jesse, you want to say something?
Yeah, but we need to sort of make sure it's
Yeah,
within an hour and a half, because otherwise you will find, especially students will
Yeah.
tune out. So if you add
sure.
more number to the panelists, then you don't do justice to any of them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think you need to sort of keep that in mind.
definitely. So we'll be together. So thank you so much, all of you, and thanks, Deepika, once again. It was really wonderful to have a co-host and a same name. So two Deepikas doing the hosting.
I
So
know.
wonderful. And stay tuned with us every Tuesday. Time we'll now figure out that maybe we shift to 5 p.m. for all other sessions. And we bring you a new topic each week with new panelists. Thank you. Stay safe
everyone.
and see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you all.